Mr. Krabs might not have a soul, but still, he was able to sell it for money. Let's take a look at the moments when Mr. Krabs' obsession with money should have gotten him punished. In pizza delivery, Mr. Krabs hits a new low, putting his employees in danger just to make a quick buck. It all starts when Squidward answers a phone call right as the Krusty Krab is closing. But before he can hang up, Mr. Krabs snatches the phone and takes an order for a pizza? The Krusty Krab doesn't even serve pizza, let alone deliver it. But who cares about logic when there's money to be made? Mr. Krabs improvises a pizza out of Krabby Patties and forces SpongeBob and Squidward to deliver it. No boating license? No problem. Squidward insists it'll be a quick trip. But SpongeBob, doing what he always does in boating school, panics and reverses them into the middle of a barren desert. Great start. To make things worse, Squidward, in a fit of frustration, kicks their boat, which drives off on its own. Now they're stranded, on foot, with a pizza that's getting colder by the second. The desert trek begins. Desperate to save the delivery, SpongeBob taps into his pioneer knowledge. He listens to the ground for oncoming vehicles, spots a truck, and does a bizarre dance to get its attention. It works, sort of. The truck speeds up and nearly flattens him. As if that weren't enough, they get swept up in the tornado. The only thing that survives? The pizza. Because of course. When they land, they've lost the road. SpongeBob suggests following moss on a rock, another pioneer trick. But Squidward, ever the city octopus, ignores him and walks in the opposite direction. Bad call, Squidward. Exhausted and starving, Squidward tries to eat the pizza. But SpongeBob, ever loyal, insists they must complete the delivery. A chase ensues, and they stumble upon a giant rock. SpongeBob confidently declares that pioneers used rocks for transportation all the time. This finally pushes Squidward over the edge. Of course, there are no pioneers left. They all died of bad travel ideas. But then, SpongeBob actually drives the rock. It works. Who needs logic? They finally arrive at the customer's house, only for the guy to freak out because there's no drink. He throws the pizza in SpongeBob's face, crushing our poor Sponge's soul. SpongeBob's devastated, thinking he ruined everything. But then, Squidward snaps. Furious at the customer's rudeness, he storms back to the door and slams the pizza into the guy's face. A rare Squidward victory. He lies to SpongeBob, saying the customer gobbled up the pizza happily. SpongeBob, reassured, enthusiastically drives them back to the Krusty Krab. And the kicker, the Krusty Krab was right across the street the whole time. For the sake of our sanity, let's just pretend that makes sense. In one-course meal, Mr. Krabs takes his rivalry with Plankton to a horrifying new level. We're talking psychological torment so extreme it nearly pushes Plankton to the edge. It all starts when Mr. Krabs is enjoying a luxurious money bath, because of course he is, when he catches a whiff of something burning. It's not gas, thankfully, but Plankton's explosives. Before Mr. Krabs can react, boom! Plankton blows up the Krusty Krab. He captures both SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs, using a feather to tickle his rival into revealing the Krabby Patty formula. SpongeBob panics and almost spills the secret, but just when victory is in Plankton's grasp, Mr. Krabs' daughter Pearl bursts in. Plankton, terrified of whales, flees to the chum bucket. And this is where Mr. Krabs gets truly sinister. Discovering Plankton's fear of whales, Mr. Krabs borrows one of Pearl's dresses. Yeah, it's as weird as it sounds. At the chum bucket, Plankton confesses his trauma to his computer wife, Karen, how whales ate his family. Karen, ever the ice queen, doesn't care. After all, there are no whales in the chum bucket, or so Plankton thinks. Then, in walks Pearl, threatening to eat him. For 2 straight weeks, Mr. Krabs, in disguise, mercilessly terrifies Plankton, driving him to the brink. Plankton's trauma climaxes in a nightmare, where a demonic Pearl devours him and his family. And the whole time, it was Mr. Krabs, laughing in disguise, broken, defeated. Plankton lies on the road, ready for a bus to end his misery. SpongeBob, horrified by Mr. Krabs' cruelty, begs him to stop. But Mr. Krabs doesn't care. His only rule: protect the formula, break every law, ruin every life, but never lose money. With no other choice, SpongeBob reveals Mr. Krabs' greatest fear: mimes. Plankton, furious and desperate for revenge, sets a mime loose on Mr. Krabs while he tries to steal the formula. In the end, SpongeBob thwarts Plankton, but Mr. Krabs gets what's coming, left helplessly irritated by a persistent mime, And that's it. If you think this was bad, wait till you see the next one. In Jellyfish Hunter, Mr. Krabs reaches a new low, committing an act so despicable it might forever ruin your view of him. It all starts innocently enough. SpongeBob's out in jellyfish fields, jellyfishing with care. He catches a jellyfish, extracts its jelly, and gently releases it, calling it Coinure 12. Then, he spots the one jellyfish he's never caught, a rare blue jellyfish. He calls it No Name. Despite SpongeBob's rocket-powered attempts, No Name always slips away. Later, during his lunch break, SpongeBob adds fresh jelly to a Krabby Patty. A customer tastes it and is blown away, singing praises and convincing everyone to add jelly to their burgers. Mr. Krabs storms out, furious someone's tampered with the recipe. But when the customer promises to eat there every day, Krabs' eyes turn to dollar signs. Jelly patties are now on the menu. Krabs tests SpongeBob with collecting more jellyfish for the jelly. It's unpaid work, but SpongeBob doesn't mind. He's happy to have a purpose. He only asks that Mr. Krabs keep the jellyfish comfortable. Mr. Krabs agrees, but as soon as SpongeBob's back is turned, he promises to keep them comfortable in his wallet. SpongeBob collects jellyfish, but Krabs is insatiable. He demands more and more until Jellyfish Fields is left empty, practically wiped out. On his way home, SpongeBob senses someone following him. He turns around. No one's there, but No Name is watching, silently. Then, things get weird. No Name calls SpongeBob, breathing heavily before hanging up. When the lights go out, SpongeBob nervously blames Gary for not paying the electric bill. Seriously, who lets a snail handle finances? He heads to the kitchen, expecting Gary, but finds a burger made with blue jelly. He takes a bite, and bam! No Name appears, trapping SpongeBob in a jar and whisking him away to a secret factory. Inside, SpongeBob discovers the grim truth. Mr. Krabs is forcefully draining the jellyfish for their jelly, maximizing profits at the cost of their suffering. It's twisted, even for Krabs. SpongeBob confronts him. Krabs tries to cover it up as a tea party. Nice try. No Name exposes the truth, and SpongeBob decides to free the jellyfish. But the door won't budge. Krabs smugly explains it's voice activated, and then accidentally says, "Open," unlocking the door. The jellyfish swarm, zapping Krabs while he frantically pedals the factory's exercise bike-powered machine. He's left charred, defeated, and forced to take jelly patties off the menu. SpongeBob vows never to capture jellyfish for anything but sport again. But then, in a twist, No Name voluntarily enters SpongeBob's net. SpongeBob names him Friend. They shake hands and, ouch, Friend's sting makes SpongeBob's hands swell up. And just like that, it's as if the jellyfish genocide never happened. In One Krab's Trash, Mr. Krabs' obsession with profit reaches ridiculous and honestly disturbing levels, proving he'll ruin anyone's happiness for a quick buck. It all starts with Mr. Krabs hosting a yard sale, peddling his worthless junk by hyping it up as rare antiques. Enter SpongeBob and Patrick, two walking targets. Patrick buys a plunger, and SpongeBob snags a soda-drinking hat. Surprisingly, these are the best items available. That's a crime in itself, honestly. But then, things take a turn. Other customers show up, offering huge sums of money for SpongeBob's hat, which turns out to be a collector's item. Mr. Krabs, smelling cash, races after SpongeBob to get it back. When he finds SpongeBob, the little guy has upgraded the hat to blow bubbles. SpongeBob refuses to part with it, no matter what. So Krabs tries to manipulate him by saying the hat makes him look like a girl. SpongeBob? Flattered, because girls are awesome. Desperate, Mr. Krabs offers SpongeBob a selection of other hats, but SpongeBob won't budge. So Krabs dials it up a notch by staging a ghostly scam. He draws a ghost on paper, dangles it on a fishing rod, and claims it's the original owner of the hat. But SpongeBob, in a rare flash of brilliance, asks the ghost's name. Panicked, Mr. Krabs blurts out the legendary name, Smitty Werbenjagermanjensen. Big mistake. SpongeBob knows Smitty's real and promptly returns the hat to Smitty's grave. Sweet, but now Krabs has a bigger problem. Determined to reclaim his treasure, Mr. Krabs heads to the graveyard. There, he stumbles upon Squidward, mourning a gravestone for his hopes and dreams. Dark stuff. But Krabs doesn't care. He digs up Smitty's grave, snags the hat, and is ready to cash in. Except, Smitty Verbanjagermanjensen rises from the dead. He wants his hat back, and he's not alone. Smitty summons a skeleton army. Mr. Krabs fights them off, narrowly escapes, and finally has his precious hat. But when he gets back, the buyers reveal they found an entire warehouse full of identical hats. They're worthless now. Krabs is devastated. All that scheming for nothing. Meanwhile, SpongeBob struts by, wearing a new hat with clapping hands. The buyers go wild, offering even more money for it than before. They chase after SpongeBob, leaving Mr. Krabs behind, sobbing over his lost fortune. As he cries, Squidward strolls by and calls him out for what he is, a big red baby. Honestly, after everything Mr. Krabs just pulled, can you blame him? In Money Talks, Mr. Krabs takes his love for money to a disturbing new level, so much so that he'd rather chat with cash than care about humans. The episode kicks off at the Krusty Krab, where a customer wants a table already occupied by two elderly folks. SpongeBob, being SpongeBob, politely says the guy can have the table when they leave, but the customer offers $5 to get it immediately. Mr. Krabs sees a golden opportunity and, without a second thought, boots the elderly couple out. Because in Mr. Krabs' world, money talks. And oh, how he wishes it actually did. Later at home, Mr. Krabs tries to force his money to talk. But shocker, inanimate objects don't chat back. Frustrated, he yells that he'd do anything to hear his precious money speak. Cue the Flying Dutchman. He appears, ready to grant this bizarre wish, on one condition. Mr. Krabs has to sell his soul. And what does Krabs do? He doesn't even blink. He seals the deal with a sprinkle of pixie dust. The next morning, Mr. Krabs wakes up thinking it was all a dream, until his money actually starts talking. Thrilled, he rushes to his safe at the Krusty Krab, grabs all his cash, and heads home for some quality time with his new chatty friends. But there's a catch. Instead of showering him with praise, the money whines about how it wants to be spent. After all, that's what money's for, right? At least, that's what we tell ourselves when we blow our budgets. Under pressure from his demanding dollars, Mr. Krabs spends wildly on things like fairy princess costumes, corn dogs, and diapers. Relatable, honestly. As his fortune slips away, Mr. Krabs panics. Desperate, he gives SpongeBob a bag of money and tells him to bury it. But then it hits him. Hiding money defeats the purpose of having it. So naturally, he grabs it back pretending everything's fine. Spoiler, everything's not fine. Mr. Krabs quickly realizes that was the worst deal ever. He's overwhelmed and wants out. But when the Flying Dutchman shows up to claim his soul, there's a twist. Instead of his soul, there's an IOU. Turns out, Mr. Krabs already sold his soul, multiple times, to multiple beings. A line of ghostly monsters appears, each one holding a claim to his soul. Even SpongeBob has one, because Krabs was short on payday. Yep, it seems Mr. Krabs has been running some shady financial schemes. In Out of the Picture, Mr. Krabs' greed reaches a disturbing new low. Forget frugality. This time, he's tiptoeing into murder territory. The episode begins with Squidward hosting an art show at the Krusty Krab, desperately trying to sell his paintings. The customers are not impressed. One guy is so horrified that he literally burns his own eyes. Yikes. Mr. Krabs shuts down the show, ensuring Squidward makes 0 sales. But then SpongeBob announces he bought one of Squidward's paintings. An art appraiser shows up and deems it worthless, until he mentions that an artist's work becomes valuable when the artist is, well, out of the picture. And just like that, Mr. Krabs decides Squidward has to go. Yep, Krabs jumps straight from penny pinching to squid crunching. First, he sends Squidward on a deadly delivery mission to Antarctica. Squidward mistakes a snow sculpture for SpongeBob, but surprise, SpongeBob's already there, chilling, literally. They somehow survive the freezing trip and deliver a frozen Krabby Patty to an Arctic sperm whale. Squidward returns alive, to Mr. Krabs' deep disappointment. Next mission, deliver food to the eerie residents of Rock Bottom. This time, SpongeBob's banned from helping because he has this annoying habit of saving Squidward's life. Squidward's left alone to face the creepy Rock Bottomites until SpongeBob pops up again, explaining that they're his friends. Mission complete. Squidward survives. Again. Desperate, Mr. Krabs shoves Squidward into a rocket and launches him to Mars. Because why not? Squidward insults the Martians on arrival, so they eat him alive. Finally, Mr. Krabs thinks his squid problem is solved. But nope, a UFO returns Squidward to the Krusty Krab, covered in Martian slime. Squidward's alive and still not valuable. The art appraiser tears the $150,000 tag off Squidward's paintings and Mr. Krabs loses it. He was fine with murder, but losing money, that's crossing the line. In a panic, Squidward flees while Mr. Krabs chases him with a mallet. SpongeBob promises to protect Squidward, but Squidward knows he'll never be safe until his paintings are destroyed. With a chainsaw in hand, Squidward hesitates. He thinks his art is too beautiful to destroy, but self-preservation kicks in, and he shreds the paintings. Mr. Krabs is furious, until the appraiser calls it the most exhilarating performance art he's ever seen. Smelling profit, Mr. Krabs joins in, wrecking the Krusty Krab alongside Squidward. They go wild, but of course, it goes too far. The roof collapses, trapping them both. The appraiser? He calls the wreckage a masterpiece and displays it in the museum. Not a bad ending considering we were this close to workplace homicide. In the episode Krab Borg, we get a disturbing glimpse into Mr. Krabs' self-centered nature. It all starts when SpongeBob watches a scary movie about robots taking over the world. You know, classic dystopian, sci-fi horror. Gary warns him not to watch, knowing SpongeBob spooks easily. But SpongeBob insists. He's a big boy. He can handle it. Cut to later that night, and SpongeBob? Yeah, he's too terrified to sleep. He's convinced robots are everywhere. Even his nightmares are filled with robots chasing him. And no, it's not Gary in disguise. The next day at the Krusty Krab, SpongeBob is on high alert. He sees robots in everything. Cleaning equipment, robots, a warning light, definitely a robot. Meanwhile, Mr. Krabs is in his office, dancing to his radio, minding his own business. But when SpongeBob hears Mr. Krabs say he feels recharged and hears him talking in what sounds like robot gibberish, SpongeBob's mind goes into overdrive. Mr. Krabs is a robot imposter. He shares his discovery with Squidward, who brushes it off like any sane person would. But SpongeBob decides to run a series of scientific tests. First up, the humor test. Squidward tells a joke. Mr. Krabs doesn't laugh. Clearly robots can't laugh. Or maybe Mr. Krabs is just dead inside. Next, the emotion test. SpongeBob tells Mr. Krabs that Squidward's father never hugged him. Krabs shrugs it off, and SpongeBob takes it as proof. Then comes the love test. SpongeBob tells Mr. Krabs that Squidward loves him. Mr. Krabs just tells SpongeBob to get back to work. Honestly, if he'd responded differently, it might have turned into workplace harassment. A crime in itself. Meanwhile, Mr. Krabs' radio breaks, so he decides to gift the batteries to his daughter, Pearl. A weirdly sweet and super cheap gesture. But when SpongeBob bursts in and startles him, Mr. Krabs accidentally throws salt into his eyes. He runs out of his office, eyes glowing red, clutching tongs. Now even Squidward believes Mr. Krabs is a robot. In full-blown panic mode, Squidward does the rational thing. He tells SpongeBob to call the Navy. But when an automated phone system answers, SpongeBob assumes robots have taken over the Navy too. Things spiral fast. Squidward grabs the mic and announces, "Robots are taking over the world." Customers flee the Krusty Krab. Mr. Krabs returns, unaware that his business is now completely empty. If there's one thing Mr. Krabs would definitely notice, it's a lack of profit. Desperate to confirm their suspicions, SpongeBob and Squidward tie up Mr. Krabs and interrogate him. You know, totally normal workplace behavior. When that doesn't work, they start smashing his kitchen appliances, including his beloved cash register. Mr. Krabs finally breaks down in tears over his precious register. And that emotional meltdown? The ultimate proof that he's not a robot. Realizing they messed up, SpongeBob suddenly remembers the movie's twist. The robot invasion was all in the character's imagination. Would have been really helpful to remember that a few hours ago, SpongeBob. Embarrassed, SpongeBob bolts to go feed Gary, leaving Squidward to deal with the aftermath. As Squidward nervously sweeps up the wreckage, Mr. Krabs lets out a furious scream. Squidward! Honestly, after all this chaos, maybe SpongeBob is the true villain of the show.